Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're embarking on a really fascinating exploration today. We're looking at excerpts from an ancient text, the Dhammapadaṭṭhakathā. These are stories, explanations, all woven around the Buddha's teachings. And the material you've brought us, it includes 3 specific accounts about groups of monks. What I find exciting is how they really challenge our usual ideas about success or progress, especially on any path of learning or growth, is about looking beyond the surface.
Absolutely. And I think what's so potent here is how these old stories offer a kind of framework, almost a timeless filter for evaluating progress. They really push us away from just counting external achievements or how things look, and instead nudge us to consider our inner state, the quality of our choices too.
Exactly. These texts ask us, and they ask you, the listener, a pretty fundamental question. How do you know if you're really progressing?
Yeah.
Genuinely. Not just, ticking boxes, but truly moving forward.
Yeah.
Let's unpack that first story. Okay, so this first one, it's set in Jetavana, a place the Buddha often stayed. And it tells us about a group of monks who felt, pretty confident about their spiritual path. And when you look at what they had actually done, you can kind of see why. The text mentions they were accomplished in virtuous conduct, really diligent in ascetic practices. They had great learning, studied the scriptures, the Pitakas.
Yeah, significant learning.
They sought out seclusion, lived apart, and they'd even attained these pretty profound states of meditation. Some had reached the state of a non-returner, experiencing that deep bliss, the Kama Sukha.
So by almost any standard, these were seriously advanced practitioners. You've got high virtue, deep discipline, huge knowledge, profound meditation, even a state where they wouldn't return to this realm of suffering.
Right.
From their point of view, reaching full awakening, arahantship must have seemed like, the next logical step, maybe even an easy one.
Exactly. The source captures that mindset perfectly.
Yeah.
Arahantship isn't difficult for us. We'll attain it whenever we wish. It's almost like they felt they'd done all the hard yards. And we're just sort of waiting for that final piece to click into place. But what happens next is where the Buddha gives a maybe surprising perspective.
Right. And instead of just patting them on the back, the Buddha points out what they were missing. Relying only on these achievements, even that genuine happiness of a non-returner state, it's not seeing the whole picture.
Okay.
It's not fully grasping that even the suffering of existence itself, havadukkha, is significant. It's a problem right up until it's completely, utterly gone.
So the warning isn't against practice, obviously. Virtue, meditation, those are necessary steps. It's the complacency. Is that the danger?
Precisely. The Buddha's point, straight from the text, is that you shouldn't just think, I'm happy now, or get overconfident, the word is visa, unless you've actually reached the destruction of the influxes, asavakkhaya, which is arahantship, that complete uprooting of all the defilements.
Okay, so the danger is stopping short. Getting comfortable before the final goal is actually reached, even if you're at a really high level. And the source uses a really striking analogy for this, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. The Buddha says, just like even a tiny bit of waste, smells bad.
Right.
Even a tiny bit of existence, bhavapako paratako, is still fundamentally suffering. It might feel small, maybe distant from the bliss of a non-returner, but that little remainder is still problematic until the whole cycle is finished.
Wow. So the core lesson from this first story, it seems to be that no matter how impressive your outward stuff looks, practices, meditation depth, knowledge, the real measure is the complete removal of inner defilements.
Exactly.
Everything else, even those really high states, it's still just a step on the way, and getting complacent is a huge risk before you actually reach the end.
It's a powerful reminder, isn't it? The ultimate marker isn't just how far you've climbed the steps, but whether you've actually reached the top and walked away from the whole cycle of suffering completely.
Okay, that definitely sets a high bar. So if overestimating your internal progress is one trap, what about focusing too much on the outside? Appearances, skills. That brings us nicely to our second story, also from Jetavana, which tackles a different kind of misplaced confidence. So in this account, we have some elder monks. They were apparently very skilled in explaining the scriptures, the text calls them, by Anjana Samayakusala, highly articulate.
Right.
And they noticed these younger monks doing practical things like dyeing robes, serving their own teachers, that kind of thing.
Okay.
Now, You might expect these senior learned monks to be focused on, I don't know, their own teaching or deepening their practice. But the source shows a very different internal landscape.
Yes, and this is where it gets really interesting, I think. Their thought process, according to the text, was something like, hey, we're skilled in explaining things, but we have nothing, meaning, no gain, no respect, no status. So let's ask the Buddha to tell these young monks they can't study with anyone else unless they check with us first. Their clear motivation was to boost their labhasakara, their own gain and respect.
So their impressive outward skill, it was coupled with this motivation driven by envy, desire for status.
Exactly that. And this contrast, this gap, is precisely what the Buddha zeroes in on. He just cuts right through it all, saying, I do not call someone a good person, Sadharupa, simply because of their ability to speak well, vakarana, or their beautiful appearance, manapakaratai.
He's drawing a really sharp line there, isn't he? Outward skills and looks versus what? What's the alternative?
Well, he clarifies that ability to speak well here just means fluency, polished speech. Beautiful appearance is just having a pleasing physical form. They're presented as superficial, external.
Okay. And his definition of a true good person, the Sadharupa, what does he point to?
He says a truly good person is someone in whom these really harmful qualities like jealousy, isa, stinginess or miserliness, machari, and deceit, sattha, have been completely eradicated, samachina. Uprooted, mulagacha, cut off, right at the root. This is the person who has, as the text graphically puts it, vomited out their defilements, ventadosa, and is genuinely wise, vitavi.
Wow. So it's got nothing to do with how well you talk or how good you look.
Nope.
But whether these really corrosive inner states have been totally removed, that's much deeper.
It is, and it's such a powerful mirror for us, isn't it? How often do we or does society judge goodness or success based on eloquence, public image, job titles, material stuff?
All the time.
Yeah. This story just redirects us completely. It asks us to look at the fundamental integrity of a person's character. Are they driven by envy? Are they selfish? Are they deceptive? True goodness, according to the Buddha here, is the absence of these deep-seated poisons, not just the presence of some outward polish or skill.
That's a profound challenge to how we usually see things. Definitely. Okay, so we've looked at complacency in practice and mistaking outward shine for inner goodness. What about the influence of others? Who we hang around with? That leads us into the third story, a well-known one about the Buddha's time alone.
Right. Source 237.
This one's set in the Rakatavana forest. The Buddha chose to live there alone for 3 months.
A period that's famously marked by the attendance of the elephant, Paralayaka. It's quite a touching detail in the texts how this elephant supposedly looked after the Buddha's needs when he was in solitude.
It is. So after this period, lay followers and about 500 monks, led by Venerable Ananda, went to find the Buddha, keen to see him again.
And there's that lovely detail in the source about Ananda's sensitivity. He actually went ahead alone first.
Oh, right.
Yeah, thinking it might not be quite right to bring such a large group immediately after the Buddha had chosen solitude. And the elephant even sort of checked Ananda's behavior, making sure he didn't, put his bowl on the Buddha's sitting place.
That's a great image. So when the monks finally saw the Buddha, they expressed concern, saying something like, "It must have been difficult for someone so refined like you to be alone for so long without any human attendance."
And the Buddha's reply just pivots the whole conversation. He moves beyond the specific situation with the elephant to this really universal teaching about companionship itself, its nature, its value.
He gives those powerful verses, doesn't he? Starting with the ideal situation. If one should obtain a wise companion, Nipakam, Sahayam, a well-dwelling wise one, Sattviharitiram, wandering together, overcoming all dangers, Parisyani, one should wander with them, joyful and mindful.
And the source explains those dangers. It's not just, lions and tigers.
Right.
The text specifically includes the internal dangers, greed, hatred. A truly wise companion is someone who actually helps you navigate and get past these inner obstacles on your path.
Okay, so a good companion is incredibly valuable. But then he presents the alternative, and it's quite stark. If one should not obtain such a wise companion, one should wander alone like a king abandoning his conquered kingdom, or like the Matanga elephant in the forest.
Yeah, those analogies are really fascinating. The king isn't abandoning failure. He's abandoning a conquered kingdom, a place of huge potential power, sure, but also massive distraction, potential heedlessness.
Okay.
And the Matanga elephant, it isn't kicked out of the herd. It chooses to leave the crowded, often messy, competitive group for the peace of solitude. Both examples show this deliberate choice. beneficial solitude over problematic company for the sake of inner well-being, clarity.
And the final point from the Buddha is pretty unambiguous. Wandering alone is better. There is no companionship with fools' bale.
That really challenges our social instincts, doesn't it? We often feel this pressure, to be with others, to belong to a group. But the Buddha's saying the quality of that association is everything. He even goes on to redefine what companionship really means in the highest sense.
How does he define it? Because it sounds like he means more than just, hanging out with someone.
Oh, much more. The text defines true companionship not even as a person, but as the actual stages and qualities of the path to enlightenment itself.
Wow.
Yeah, it lists things like ethical conduct, silas, ascetic disciplines, dhutangas, meditative states, trajana, the paths and fruits of awakening, different kinds of knowledge, and ultimately, nirvana. Those, it says, are the real companions you should cultivate, the ones you should rely on.
So bringing this back to, your life, listener, whether it's learning something, your career, personal growth, who or what you associate with is absolutely crucial. It suggests it's better to seek understanding and integrity on your own than to be pulled down or led astray by influences, whether people, information sources, online communities, whatever, that embodies the opposite of wisdom. The ultimate companion is your own commitment to growth itself.
It really shifts the focus, doesn't it? Away from external validation or just being with people towards this internal alignment with wisdom, with purity.
So bringing these three powerful stories together, you could really see this consistent message coming through. Across all of them, the wisdom points us decisively beyond the superficial stuff. Achievements, appearances.
Yeah, story one warns against complacency. Even with impressive practices or high states like being a non-returner, true progress is eradicating defilements because even a little bit of existence is still suffering until the goal's fully reached.
And story two shows us that real goodness isn't about how well you talk or how good you look. It's about the absence of those inner poisons.
Yeah.
Jealousy, stinginess, deceit, rooted out completely.
And story three teaches us discernment in our associations. It's better to walk the path alone than to be in the company of those who lead you off track. The true companion is the path itself, the pursuit of wisdom and purity.
Yeah, the common thread is really strong. Genuine value, authentic progress. It's found in inner transformation, in making wise choices about your internal state, your influences, not just piling up external achievements or perfecting your image or, just being part of whatever group.
Yeah.
So here's the challenge maybe this deep dive offers you. How does this ancient wisdom actually apply to your life right now? When you're going after a goal, learning something new, trying to improve yourself, are you mainly focused on those visible signs of success? The applause, the titles, the perfect online profile? Or are you also looking inward? Are you paying attention to the integrity of how you're doing things? Are you actively working on lessening those inner defilements? Becoming less reactive, less self-focused, more honest? And are you being really discerning about the people and the influences you let into your life?
These texts really give us a profound, maybe even challenging filter for seeing past all that surface stuff towards what truly matters for genuine growth, real well-being.
So to wrap up this deep dive, let's just hold on to those core insights. Don't settle for complacency based on partial wins. Don't mistake outward polish for inner goodness. And be fiercely wise in choosing your companions or embracing solitude, because the ultimate companionship is your own journey towards wisdom.
Yeah. And thank you for sharing these incredibly insightful texts and for joining us on this exploration today.
And maybe here's a final thought for you to mull over as you go forward. In a world that often seems obsessed with external metrics, followers, likes, promotions, acquisitions, all that, how can you quietly, intentionally apply this wisdom? How can you start looking for the eradication of defilements in yourself and maybe even in the subtle ways people interact around you as the truer, deeper measure of real progress?